Let's get right into it. Number 20, Coffeyville, Kansas. Welcome to Coffeyville, Kansas. Population? About 8,500. Median home price? Around $60,000. Yes, 60 grand. That's less than a year of tuition at some universities, and unlike college, this house will actually give you a roof instead of debt. On paper, Coffeyville looks like a dream bargain. Big lots, low property taxes, and homes so cheap you'll think you clicked on Monopoly money instead of Zillow. There are houses here that cost less than the new iPhone. You could literally buy a 2-bedroom, 1-bath, and still have change left over for Taco Bell. But of course, there's a catch. Coffeyville's economy never fully recovered after manufacturing declined. Jobs are scarce, and poverty rates are high. The crime rate? Let's just say it keeps the local police department busy. Add in shrinking population numbers and you get the classic cheap for a reason formula. That said, Coffeyville does have a quirky side. It's famous for the Dalton Defenders Museum, commemorating a legendary Wild West shootout. And if you're the kind of person who brags about how little you paid for a house, Coffeyville might just be your ultimate flex. Number 19, Parsons, Kansas. If Coffeyville felt cheap, wait until you meet its cousin Parsons. This small southeast Kansas town clocks in at about $81,000 for a median home. That's not just affordable, you could put it on a credit card if you're feeling bold affordable. Parsons has all the trademarks of a bargain town: wide streets, plenty of houses built when Elvis was still a teenager, and more yard space than you'll ever know what to do with. You want a detached garage? A workshop? A chicken coop? At these prices, you can have all three and still keep your mortgage lower than your monthly Starbucks tab. But of course, there's a catch. The local economy has been shrinking for decades. Jobs are thin, wages are low, and the population has been steadily drifting away in search of opportunity elsewhere. The town has an old rail hub history, but most of that industry is long gone. Still, for those who want the peace and quiet of rural Kansas and bragging rights about buying a house for less than a used Ford pickup, Parsons delivers. Cheap, quiet, and maybe just a little too quiet. Number 18, Flint, Michigan. Probably the most infamous cheap housing city in America. The median home price here, around $65,000. That's right, in Flint, the American dream costs about the same as a new Tesla battery replacement. On Zillow, you'll find whole houses, not condos, not shacks, going for less than the average US down payment. 3 bedrooms, decent yards, sometimes even fully renovated, all for the price of a studio apartment in Chicago. Sounds too good to be true, right? Well, here's the catch. Flint has been through the ringer. Between the water crisis, economic collapse after auto plants closed, and a crime rate that keeps headlines busy, Flint is the textbook definition of cheap for a reason. Population decline? Yep. Poverty rate? High. Infrastructure? Let's just say work in progress. But here's the twist. Flint is also trying to reinvent itself. Art collectives, downtown lofts, and some grassroots community efforts are breathing life back into certain neighborhoods. If you've got patience and maybe a strong stomach for risk, Flint is a place where you could buy low and maybe, just maybe, ride a comeback story. Number 17, Toledo, Ohio. Toledo, Ohio, the Glass City. Median home price? Around $128,000, which means you can buy an entire house here for the same amount some people spend on their kitchen remodel. On Zillow, you'll see brick bungalows, 2-story family homes, even the occasional lakeside fixer-upper, all for prices that make you wonder if the realtor accidentally dropped a zero. Compared to Ohio's big brothers like Columbus or Cleveland, Toledo looks like a clearance rack where everything's been marked down 70%. But of course, cheap always comes with a catch. Toledo has struggled with the usual Rust Belt cocktail: population loss, manufacturing decline, and crime that's stubbornly above average. Add in freezing winters and potholes that qualify as small canyons, and you'll start to see why the prices are so low. That said, Toledo isn't all doom and gloom. It's got the Toledo Zoo, one of the best in the country, and a surprisingly strong art museum. Plus, it's close to Lake Erie, so you can fish, boat, or just brag to your friends that you have waterfront access even if it's frozen half the year. Cheap? Absolutely. Boring? Not if you know where to look. Number 16, Bay City, Michigan. Bay City, Michigan. Median home price around $123,000, which is insane considering this place sits right on the water. Waterfront towns usually mean overpriced condos and marinas filled with yachts. Bay City? You can buy a house here for the cost of a new bass boat. The town has a certain old-school charm, a historic downtown, a few decent breweries, and views of Saginaw Bay that would cost you millions in California. Zillow will show you brick colonials and cozy bungalows for prices that seem like typos. If you've ever dreamed about waking up near the water without taking out a second mortgage, Bay City is your shot. But here comes the fine print. The local economy isn't exactly booming. Bay City has faced the same Rust Belt struggles as its neighbors. Factory closures, population decline, and employment that's more hold on tight than thriving. Winters are brutal, and if you're allergic to lake effect snow, pack your tissues. Still, Bay City has personality. It hosts summer concerts, tall ship festivals, and even has a low-key art scene. If you want cheap living with a side of lake life and don't mind shoveling snow, Bay City delivers. Number 15, Martinsville, Virginia. Martinsville, Virginia, once famous for furniture factories and textiles, now famous for being one of the cheapest places in the state to buy a house. The median home price sits at around $137,000, which is shockingly low when you remember Virginia also has places like Arlington where a closet rents for more than that. What you'll get in Martinsville: affordable homes, a slower pace of life, and scenery that actually delivers. The town is tucked in the foothills of the Blue Ridge Mountains, which means autumn looks like a postcard, and you're never too far from a hiking trail or fishing spot. Zillow here shows ranch-style homes and brick colonials priced like starter cars. But here's the flip side. The local economy took a beating when manufacturing jobs dried up. Unemployment and poverty rates have been persistent issues. Crime isn't off the charts, but it's higher than you'd expect in a town of just 13,000 people. The nightlife? If you're lucky, you might find a karaoke bar. Still, if you want a house with a backyard, mountain views, and a mortgage that won't strangle you, Martinsville delivers. Just know you're trading economic opportunity for peace and quiet. Number 14, Weirton, West Virginia. Weirton, West Virginia, once a booming steel town, now a place where you can buy a house for the cost of a luxury SUV. The median home price hovers around $145,000, which is dirt cheap when you remember this city sits right in the Pittsburgh metro area. Here's what that means. In Weirton, you get small town prices with big city access. Drive 30 minutes north and you're in Pittsburgh. Stick around town and you'll find tree-lined neighborhoods, quiet streets, and houses with actual front porches, you know, the kind where neighbors wave instead of filing noise complaints. But, as always, there's a twist. Weirton's steel industry collapsed decades ago, taking jobs and population with it. The economy has never fully recovered, and a lot of young people leave for better opportunities. The upside? Its safe crime rates here are surprisingly low compared to other cheap Rust Belt towns. So, what you're left with is an oddly affordable, oddly quiet city that feels frozen in time. If you want cheap living with Pittsburgh just down the road, Weirton is one of the few places where that's still possible. Number 13, Jacksonville, Illinois. Jacksonville, Illinois. Not to be confused with the much bigger Jacksonville in Florida. This one's a small city of about 17,000 people, sitting in central Illinois with a median home price around $137,000. In other words, you can buy a perfectly livable 3-bedroom here for what amounts to a down payment in Chicago. The vibe? Think classic Midwest, quiet neighborhoods, tree-lined streets, and homes that come with actual yards instead of patchy rectangles of grass. Jacksonville also has Illinois College, which gives the city a little academic energy plus coffee shops, bookstores, and a few restaurants that cater to students. The downside? Like many small Illinois towns, Jacksonville's economy isn't booming. Manufacturing jobs have faded, and while the college helps keep things afloat, it's not exactly driving major growth. Entertainment options are limited too, unless you count county fairs and high school sports. But here's the trade-off: safe neighborhoods, affordable homes, and a real sense of community. Jacksonville is one of those places where you can actually know your neighbors, walk downtown, and live without financial panic. Number 12, Jerseyville, Illinois. Jerseyville, Illinois, a small Midwestern town where the median home price hovers around $143,000. That's not just affordable, that's buy a house and still have cash left for a riding mower affordable. Located about 45 minutes north of St. Louis, Jerseyville has that classic small-town vibe, a courthouse square, family-owned diners, and neighborhoods where the biggest traffic jam is a tractor rolling down Main Street. Zillow here will show you solid Midwestern homes with big yards and plenty of space, the kind of houses where kids still ride bikes until the streetlights come on. But, as with all towns on this list, there's a twist. The job market in Jerseyville isn't exactly booming. Many residents commute to bigger cities for work, and younger people often move away for better opportunities. Entertainment? Unless you're really into county fairs and high school football, you'll be creating your own fun. That said, if you want peace, affordability, and the option to dip into St. Louis for big city amenities, Jerseyville gives you the best of both worlds. Cheap houses, quiet streets, and that sweet spot between rural and suburban life. Number 11. Coshocton, Ohio. Coshocton, Ohio, a small city with a big discount. The median home price is around $156,000, which means you can snag a house here for less than half the US average. This is one of those classic Ohio river towns with plenty of historic character. Walk downtown and you'll find 19th century buildings, brick streets, and the kind of storefronts that look like they've been frozen in time. On Zillow, you'll see roomy Victorians and brick homes that in other markets would be six-figure down payments alone. Here, they're the whole house. But here's the reality check. Coshocton has faced heavy economic decline. Manufacturing jobs left long ago, poverty levels are high, and the local job market hasn't exactly reinvented itself. Add in population loss and limited opportunities for younger generations, and you start to see why prices are so low. Still, for someone looking for peace, affordability, and small-town charm, Coshocton has its perks. It's cheap, it's quiet, and if you're the type who wants a historic home at a fraction of the cost, this town delivers. Just be ready to trade big city opportunities for small-town simplicity. Number 10. Scranton, Pennsylvania. Scranton, Pennsylvania. Yes, that's Scranton, the one made famous by The Office. But here's the thing, while Michael Scott was fumbling his way through paper sales, real estate here was quietly staying dirt cheap. The median home price sits around $198,000, which is still about half of the national median. Zillow will show you big old homes, 3, sometimes 4 bedrooms, often with porches and yards, all for less than what a studio apartment costs in Philly or New York. If you've ever wanted to live in a house where you don't have to hear your neighbors sneeze through the walls, Scranton makes that dream attainable. But Scranton's affordability comes with baggage. Like much of Northeast Pennsylvania, the city's economy took hits after coal and industry jobs disappeared. Poverty rates are higher than average, and while crime isn't Detroit-level bad, it's still an issue in certain neighborhoods. Winters? Cold, snowy, and long. The flip side, Scranton has been slowly reinventing itself. Affordable living, some new downtown investment, and a little cultural buzz thanks to its pop culture fame. Cheap homes, a quirky reputation, and the ability to say you live in the office city. That's Scranton in a nutshell. Number 9. Mission, Texas. Mission, Texas, right on the US-Mexico border and one of the cheapest cities in the Lone Star State to snag a house. The median home price is around $220,000, which in Texas real estate terms is basically a buy one, get one free compared to Austin or Dallas. On Zillow, you'll find stucco homes, brick ranchers, and even brand new builds that somehow cost less than a downtown Austin parking space. Mission also has warm weather year-round, citrus groves, and a location just a short drive from the Rio Grande. But, and you knew this was coming, life in Mission isn't without its challenges. Being a border town, the economy is modest, wages are low, and while it's growing, it doesn't have the same job opportunities as larger Texas metros. Summers are brutally hot, the kind of heat that makes your flip-flops melt to the pavement, and healthcare access can be stretched thin. Still, Mission has its appeal. It's affordable, family-oriented, and the cost of living is among the lowest in the country. If you want the Texas lifestyle without Texas-sized housing prices, Mission is your budget-friendly loophole. Number 8. St. Louis, Missouri. St. Louis, the gateway to the West, and apparently also the gateway to housing prices that feel like they belong in another decade. The median home price sits around $185,000, which is shocking when you realize this is a major city with pro sports teams, a famous arch, and real cultural clout. On Zillow, you'll find brick 2-stories, historic row houses, and even full-on Victorians for prices that would barely get you a one-bedroom condo in DC. Want a house with character, hardwood floors, and maybe even stained glass windows? St. Louis is serving them up like it's happy hour. But cheap always comes with the fine print. St. Louis has some of the highest crime rates in the country, and the city's good neighborhood, bad neighborhood map changes block by block. The school system struggles, population has been declining for decades, and yes, potholes big enough to swallow your front bumper. That said, St. Louis has a lot going for it. World-class free museums, the Cardinals, a legendary food scene, toasted ravioli. Anyone? And neighborhoods that are genuinely beautiful. If you can pick your spot wisely, St. Louis is one of the few big cities where homeownership is still within reach. Number 7, Del Rio, Texas. Del Rio, Texas, sitting right on the US-Mexico border with a median home price around $213,000. That's not monopoly money cheap like Kansas, but in Texas terms, it's still a steal. For the price of a one-bedroom condo in Austin, you can get an entire 3-bedroom house here with a backyard big enough for barbecues, a trampoline, and maybe even a goat. The vibe? Hot, as in really hot. Summers regularly break 100 degrees, and shade is less trees everywhere and more good luck with your hat. Zillow will show you modest stucco homes, brick ranchers, and plenty of properties that would make snowbirds jealous. Add in the fact that Lake Amistad is right nearby, great for fishing, boating, or just convincing yourself you're on vacation, and Del Rio has some surprising perks. Now the catch. Del Rio is remote. You're hours from a major city, and job opportunities are limited outside of the Laughlin Air Force Base. Wages are low, healthcare access is decent but not world-class, and if you need big city amenities, you'll be driving a lot. Still, if you want affordable housing, sunny skies, and a slower pace of life, Del Rio delivers. Just bring sunscreen and patience. Number 6, Bemidji, Minnesota. Bemidji population, about 15,000. Median home price around $218,000. On the surface, it looks like your standard small Midwestern town. But here's the thing, Bemidji has personality. It proudly calls itself the first city on the Mississippi, and it's also home to 2 of the weirdest roadside celebrities in America, giant statues of Paul Bunyan and his blue ox Babe. Zillow might show you modest 3 bedrooms with yards, but the real flex here is taking a selfie with a lumberjack the size of a semi-truck. The upside? Bemidji is surprisingly livable. It's got a regional hospital, a state university, and plenty of outdoor recreation. Lakes are everywhere, which means fishing, boating, and the kind of scenic summers that make you forget you live in Minnesota. And the prices? Way lower than the national average, making it a budget-friendly option for small-town life. But here's the fine print. Winters. We're talking brutal, face-numbing cold, where the thermometer stays below 0 like it's trying to prove a point. Job opportunities are decent for a small town, but you're not exactly swimming in high-paying gigs. Still, for affordable homes, lakeside living, and bragging rights about Paul Bunyan as your neighbor, Bemidji holds its own. Number 5, Clearlake, California. California and cheap housing usually go together about as well as oil and water, but Clearlake is the exception. The median home price here is around $210,000, which, by California standards, is basically pocket change. That's less than half the state average, and in LA, that money might get you a parking space. So, what's the deal? Clearlake sits in rural Lake County, wrapped around Clearlake, the largest natural freshwater lake in the state. Zillow will show you everything from modest ranch homes to lakeview properties that in other parts of California would cost millions. Here, they go for a quarter of that. But you knew there was a catch. Clearlake has its challenges. The economy is limited, poverty rates are high, and jobs are scarce unless you're in healthcare or tourism. Crime is above average, and wildfire risk is a very real part of life here. Add in its relative isolation, and you'll see why prices never skyrocketed like the rest of California. Still, if you dream about living in California without selling your soul to Silicon Valley, Clearlake is proof it can be done affordable, scenic, and just a little rough around the edges. Number 4, Jackson, Tennessee. Jackson, halfway between Memphis and Nashville, and one of the few places left where you can still get a house for under $250,000. The median home price sits around $227,000, which in Tennessee's red-hot market feels like finding a 20 in an old pair of jeans. On Zillow, you'll see tidy brick ranchers, newer construction homes, and the occasional fixer-upper that could double as your HGTV side hustle. For the price of a one-bedroom in Nashville, you can get a full family home here with a yard, driveway, and maybe even a front porch swing. But there's always a twist. Jackson has a crime problem that consistently ranks higher than the national average. The economy is decent, but leans heavily on healthcare and manufacturing stable, but not booming. And while it's cheaper than the big Tennessee cities, it doesn't have the same energy or opportunities. That said, Jackson's location is its ace card. You're just an hour from Memphis, 2 from Nashville, and close enough to tap into both cities without paying their inflated housing prices. For budget-conscious buyers who still want Southern City access, Jackson is an underrated middle ground. Number 3. Eagle Pass, Texas. A border city with a median home price of about $228,000. That's not dirt cheap Kansas pricing, but in today's housing market, it still feels like you're getting away with something. Zillow here will show you everything from stucco ranch homes to new builds in quiet subdivisions, often with more square footage than you'd ever find in Dallas or Austin for twice the price. The town also sits right on the Rio Grande across from Piedras Negras, Mexico, so you literally get a two-country vibe for the price of one. But of course, there's a twist. Eagle Pass is remote. You're hours away from a major metro, jobs are limited, and wages don't exactly keep up with inflation. Healthcare access can be stretched, and summers are brutal, the kind where you start questioning your life choices every time you step outside. That said, Eagle Pass is growing. It's one of the fastest developing border cities, thanks to trade and its unique position. The community is family-oriented, food is fantastic, and housing remains shockingly affordable compared to the rest of Texas. If you want affordability with a little Tex-Mex flair, Eagle Pass makes the cut. Number 2. Bloomfield, Iowa. Now we're off to Bloomfield, Iowa, a county seat town where the median home price hovers around $232,000, which, compared to the rest of Iowa, might sound a little pricey. But stack it up against California or New York, and suddenly Bloomfield looks like a clearance sale. This place has all the charm you'd expect from rural Iowa. Tidy houses, friendly neighbors who probably know what you had for breakfast, and a courthouse square that looks straight out of a Hallmark movie. You can actually buy a family home here without auctioning off your organs. But here's the twist. Bloomfield is small, very small. About 2,600 people call it home, and the pace of life is somewhere between relaxing and did time just stop. Jobs are limited, the nightlife is non-existent, and unless you're into county fairs and Friday night football, you might find yourself scrolling Zillow again out of sheer boredom. That said, Bloomfield is the kind of town where you trade big city chaos for peace, safety, and space. It's quiet, it's affordable, and it's basically the opposite of New York real estate, meaning in Bloomfield, you actually get what you pay for. Number 1. Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. And at the top of the list, we've got Pittsburgh, the Steel City, home of the Steelers, and apparently also home to some of the most underrated housing deals in America. The median home price is around $243,000, which is shocking when you realize this is a major city with world-class universities, Fortune 500 companies, and actual culture. On Zillow, you'll find everything from classic brick row houses to historic Victorians, many under $250,000. In New York or San Francisco, that's not even a down payment. In Pittsburgh, that's the entire house, with change left over for pierogies and season tickets. But here's what makes Pittsburgh stand out. It's not cheap because everything collapsed. This city actually reinvented itself. The steel mills may be gone, but they've been replaced by tech startups, medical research, and universities like Carnegie Mellon and Pitt. It's one of the rare places where affordability meets opportunity. Sure, winters are gray, the roads will test your suspension, and hills make parking an extreme sport. But Pittsburgh delivers something rare in America right now, a big city where homeownership is still within reach. That's why it takes the number 1 spot.